Okay, here we are. Welcome everyone again to the World Sports Chiropractic Chat Show. And this is season 2 episode. I don't even know what it is anymore, but regardless, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you might be on the planet and watching us this evening. So, great to have you on board. And today I have an absolute pleasure of introducing Dr. Scott Howitt from Canada. And Scott is basically our main man when it comes to head injuries and concussion and various other things. So he's an amazing guy, knows a hell of a lot about a hell of a lot of stuff. So welcome, Scott. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Mika. Nice to see you. Been watching a few of these podcasts over the last few weeks, and I had a feeling my turn might come up, and I'm glad that it's now. So I'm happy to speak to you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great to have you on board. I mean, it's always good to have people who appreciate ice hockey and that. You kind of can't go wrong with ice hockey people, really, can you?
Yeah, ice hockey, triathletes, and golfers in some sort of combination.
There you go. See, that could be like the holy trilogy or some description.
It could be a new kind of triathlon, perhaps.
It could be, yeah. You know what? That could be the modern, a new pentathlon, couldn't it? If you throw in those 3 or 5 different sports.
I like it.
I like it a lot, actually. Maybe we should start a new sport, hey? Crack that into the Olympics somehow. Oh, goodness me. But hey, listen, man. So how's life in Canada at the moment? You guys are going full steam ahead with loads of things. You have you have a symposium coming up with your big organization there, and all sorts of things are happening. Tell me a little bit what's going on.
Yeah, it's actually it's the same for all of us, sort of navigating this new not new, but COVID world that just kind of keeps on spinning around here for us. But we actually had a symposium this past weekend.
Just going. All right.
Yeah, on overhead sports and throwing. It was a largely sort of a baseball themed conference, multidisciplinary, and it was unreal, actually. So that was this past Sunday.
Fantastic.
And so now that I've got that clicked off of the calendar, time to refocus on the next virtual symposium that I'm looking forward to, which is, of course, the FICS Symposium.
Exactly right. So you've done your warm up, and now it's time for the big event, isn't it?
That's it, exactly.
Fantastic. Hey, so obviously, your role in this one is going to be delivering the head injury module and the concussion module, which of course is absolutely key when it comes to, of course, treating athletes from various different sports. But what's your kind of take on concussion in sport? Which sports produce the most concussions?
It's interesting. It makes a difference between male and female sport. Obviously, in Canada here, we're pretty focused on hockey. In the U.S., there's a fair number of concussions, obviously associated with football, and I don't mean soccer football. I mean
American football.
American football, of course. And then there's a fair number of concussions associated with playing soccer. And particularly in female soccer players. So you really can't, to be honest with you, really can't get away from concussions in really any sport. I'm involved in a number of research projects right now, and I was looking at some data from national level athletes here in Canada, and this probably would not come as a surprise to you, but the number one injury is ankle injuries, actually, like ankle sprains. Low back pain is like right up there, like I think number 2. I don't have sort of memorized like what the top 10 is, but I can tell you that concussion is in 5 or 6, and that's across the sports. And and a good number of those athletes have had more than one concussion as well. So,
do you know, that's a lot more than I thought.
yeah,
That is a heck of a lot more than I thought. Having played hockey my growing up years and soccer, football, and whatnots, and having never actually witnessed a concussion, I've always been in this sort of rosy world of thinking, it doesn't happen to us and it happens to all those unlucky dudes somewhere. But actually, it sounds like it's very real.
Yeah, and I mean, I probably won't be alone in this in terms of people that are interested in it and do some research in it. But I think I've had 5 or 6 for sure concussions myself.
Oh wow!
And as a kid, had to spend the night in the hospital at least 3 times overnight for concussions. So perhaps I'm proof that you can get concussed and still actually have a bit of a brain inside there still.
Imagine what you would have been like without those concussions, though.
That's the other way to look at it, for sure.
Oh man, you would have been absolutely unstoppable. Currently we're forced to be reckoned with anyway. So no, we're so happy to have you on board. And just a little sort of forgive the advertisement and spoof, but of course we got to remember that the head injury module actually is mandatory for all those sports chiropractors who have the ICSC. So you have to have your head injury module, and you have to have all of that in place if you want to go to games. So boys and girls out there watching, if your head injury module is not valid anymore, because they expire every 2 years, so you got to revalidate every 2 years. So when it's time to apply for the CSIT games, for example, in October in Italy, which I'm definitely going to put my application in for, or any of the others, if your head injury module is not up to date, you won't join. You won't get in. So this is a perfect opportunity to catch Dr. Scott there. And is it Jordan you're doing that with?
Yeah, so I'm actually really looking forward to presenting with Jordan Knowlton Key from Minneapolis, from the US.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many of these virtual conferences you've been a part of yourself, Mika, or if you've been like presenting or attending them. I think you were on that FICS one earlier in Spain.
Yeah, Madrid. Yeah, I was on
that
one.
And so I think you can probably get into the same headspace I'm in that sometimes in these virtual conferences, it's hard to really like interact with the audience and read totally. The audience. And when you have, whatever platform you're on, you have your PowerPoint taking up like, at least half the page. You see your little picture, right. and then maybe 2 others. So right. the rest of the people, you don't know. Well, not everyone even has their video camera on, so you don't know if people are sleeping or laying on the couch or whatever.
Picking their nose there,
Sure, but
no, that's right.
It's hard as a presenter because you don't get that sort of facial expression. You tell a joke and you wait, but you don't hear anything. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to presenting with Jordan. So at least there's one other person there that I can interact with and someone that's to right. laugh if we tell a joke or something. So.
That's absolutely right. No, I presented one recently actually, and because of something that happened, so basically the screen share went a bit funny, so I didn't see anybody. I didn't even see myself. All I saw was my PowerPoint. So I was basically chatting at my PowerPoint for that hour, and it's just so like it's a surreal feeling, isn't it? And you don't hear anything. All you do is just you're kind of droning on and trying to kind of make it engaging and that, but. Yeah, when there's zero response, it's actually quite tricky.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation with Jordan, and what we've been talking about in terms of like how we want to like lay this thing out is to work through maybe a few cases and use some cases as sort of the backdrop of how we may be able to talk about how we're assessing it, whether it's in your office or on the pitch or on the field, and work through a number of the different principles using perhaps a case or two to help sort of guide the way. And
absolutely.
And so I'm looking forward to that interaction with Jordan and hopefully the interaction with some people in the audience.
Yeah.
So it makes it, more interesting. And sometimes there's questions that get asked that we don't even know the answer to. And that's okay too, because then it turns into a bit of a discussion of, hey, that's a great question. And, the evidence is not quite there to give us an answer. So in that case, we have to go with like, okay, what does the evidence seem to point to? What is my experience? Mika, what's your experience? And, what does the patient want? And let's try to come to some sort of idea of how to push that forward, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's great. I love the fact that you're doing it a bit of a case-based presentation, because it makes it so much more sort of down to earth and more real, isn't it? When you just have somebody kind of blathering out, loads of different references from all the different journals, it's almost too clinical, if you like. Well, no, clinical is the wrong word. It's too abstract in a way. But when you tie it to cases, I find it all of a sudden it just kind of makes a hell of a lot more sense.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes it's that that more lecture didactic kind of approach is hard to see the applicability. Whereas in a case, you might be like, oh, that reminds me of that that soccer player I was treating, or that reminds me of, or it's not the perfect thing, but I can sort of find a way to like make it fit to something that might be a little bit more experiential.
Absolutely. And all of a sudden you start connecting the dots as well. Like you said, is that soccer player, or is that hockey player, or is that golfer who fell over and cracked his head on a wheel of a buggy or something like that? But all of a sudden, it just kind of starts tying in. And then when you see somebody else come in and use, these things, these clinical pearls, they just kind of pop up in your head really nicely. Now, I still remember some of the stuff from my own uni days when we had this amazing lecturer back in our uni days, and he always used to drop clinical pearls, and that's exactly what he called them, and I've used that term since then. And no, these clinical pearls, they're amazing, and everybody remembers them pretty much forever. So whatever clinical pearls you have to chuck in, please chuck them in handsomely.
Well, I think the easiest thing for us to remember are stories, right? So and a case in a way is a bit of a story that you can then build some of these principles or build some of these sort of bedrock kind of moments of those, whether they're clinical pearls or they're like the knowledge bombs or the golds or whatever it is that you want to call it. It's those things that we're able to remember.
That's right. Absolutely. Cool, man. So, hey, listen, when it comes to headaches, what am I talking about here? Concussions. What do you reckon is the number one kind of misunderstood thing about concussions? I'm very curious about this actually myself.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of opening up Pandora's box a little bit there, but
sorry for putting you on the spot.
But what I'll say is, and the thing that really, if you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on with research on the concussion side, it's the idea that that rest was going to be really helpful. In the same way that we don't want someone with a little back pain just like going and laying on their bed. We don't actually like there's a moment where you need some rest, but it's fairly minimal, and we need to get people active and exercising.
Yeah.
Obviously, below a threshold where you're not like making their symptoms worse, or but the research is suggesting like earlier intervention for exercise, and being able to sort that out is really so helpful in being able to help people recover more quickly. So now, I mean, I'm dating myself, but when I told you I had 5 or 6 concussions. And really it was like, go stay in a dark room, don't do anything. Like, in fact, they would wake you up every half an hour when you were trying to sleep at night to make sure that you didn't have something worse than a concussion, which is those red flag kind of issues. But we've changed. Like the dark room, go away, don't come and interact with anybody for the next week, and then come out and see how you're doing, has evolved to a more active approach, and
Mm-hmm.
and so it kind of actually, well, it really jives with me because the other, besides concussion thing that I'm involved with on the research side of things, is exercise as medicine,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and exercise as an intervention.
yeah,
So where those two things really align for me is, and we'll be talking about it obviously during our presentation,
yeah.
is the Buffalo concussion treadmill test. So getting people on a treadmill, getting sort of a heart rate and an ability to exercise that information to you, so you know what to do
Mm.
moving forward,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
critical.
Absolutely. No, I love the whole exercise medicine thing. I've been talking that for years, telling everybody about it, and it's something that really resonates with me as well. And it's great that this is sort of finally validated in maybe not so many words, but it's been totally validated that early mobilization and early activation. I remember like what actually brought my budding ice hockey career to an end was a series of shoulder injuries that required surgery. But it was one of the surgeries. I remember I was woken up in the middle of the night by this weird buzzing noise, and I just kept listening through the sort of coming out of surgery kind of drug haze, and I was listening. What is this noise? And turns out it was the bloke in the next bed who had knee surgery, and he was on an active brace. So the thing kept going up and down all night long. And the buzzing just kept me awake, which I found very annoying at the time. But since then, obviously, I understood that, that was obviously the early mobilization. And it doesn't really get any earlier than that, really. Straight out of the theater into a mobile brace, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
which kind of makes sense with this as well.
the continuous passive movement is an interesting topic, but the other topic there would be like, so you didn't sleep, so that was absolutely detrimental to your recovery or healing from whatever you were there for.
No, he was out cold, but I was the one who was awake.
Yeah. So if you can't sleep, like, so he was doing fine, but like at your expense.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. I don't hold grudges though. I've given him a long time ago. It's all cool. I don't cry myself to sleep about that anymore. But no, these are the kind of things that, of course, are important. Now, listen, in terms of obviously head injuries, it's not only concussion, though, is it? Because there's a fair bit more to it, as far as I understand.
Yeah. I mean, in particular, we will be going over like, what those red flags are. So, and those more serious head injuries, um, you know, subdural hematomas and such, where you need to be able to identify when an athlete has something more serious than a concussion, and obviously get them referred out, get them into the hospital, get them to the right uh, scenario. So it's more than just the concussion. In fact, I'd say there's people that have had some long standing concussions, so I don't want to minimize that. There are certainly people that have really struggled with concussions,
Mm.
but the injuries that are not concussions are actually quite often way more serious and life-threatening. So
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I remember from my long time ago when I first did the sort of ICSC head injury module and that, there was talking about lacerations and all these kind of things. Are you guys still covering those in the head injury module, or not
yeah,
so
I
much
mean,
nowadays?
we'll touch base on that a little bit. There is some more information on that in the actual online module
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
head injuries. There's some great information in there that is a great resource that I would recommend. The funny thing is, and perhaps this goes back to your earlier question about some stuff that we don't know or didn't know, is that you don't even have to get hit in the head to get a concussion, right? Like it's your brain bouncing around inside of your skull, and
Mm.
it's really hard to have your brain bounce around inside your skull without moving your neck. So
I,
and so whether you're hit in the shoulder or you're hit in the back or from wherever, that whiplash kind of effect that is obviously impacting your cervical spine could for certain impact your brain as well. And
Mm.
so it doesn't have to be a blow to the head. So a blow to the body or to the head, right?
Yeah, it's all about that acceleration, deceleration force, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it's like. Somebody once told me, it's not the fall, but it's the sudden stop that produces the problem.
For some people, there's no question. Yeah.
Aye, absolutely. No, that's great stuff. Now, listen, any little tips you want to give at this point to those who are maybe considering doing the ICSC modules, or even joining our wonderful organization and becoming sports chiropractors and wanting to work in the games and that, when it comes to actual, well, what I'm kind of asking for here is a couple of little clinical pearls you want to dish out to people who are sort of just starting out. Anything you want to throw out at the moment?
Wow. Yeah, it's just like where do I land on that one?
Yeah, I know it's a very broad question. Sorry about that.
So, I mean, from a as a chiropractor working in sport, and this is really, I mean, I could say this with every question you ask. It depends. In many ways, it depends on where you are, and what your scope is, and what you're able to do. But if you're on the sideline and you are the emergency first responder that is most trained and most appropriate to deal with whatever just happened on the pitch, that's a skill set that you have to own, and you have to, besides updating your your concussion knowledge, you need to update like your emergency first responder training. So I mean, first and foremost, like, we may be the person that has to respond to an injury that is not really chiropractic. It's actually, it's an emergency. So having that in your back pocket and being comfortable with being able to respond to those kinds of injuries. And the natural extension to that is actually concussion, because it is one of those injuries that we have to get out onto the pitch and make a decision as to what's happening with this athlete, and do we need to remove them from play, and then assess them, in the dressing room, assess them back in your clinic, refer them on to the right person, perhaps send them to emergency. So I'm not sure I'm going to answer this exactly the way that you were asking me, but
that's fine.
The thing that kind of jumps out to my head is, like, in all the sports and in all the teams that I work with, it's the medical team that is kind of like really worth mentioning, in that we need to be able to wear various different hats depending on the scenario we find ourselves in. But be really comfortable working with other health professionals, medical doctor, physiotherapist, athletic therapist, whoever we're working with. And the thing about sport that's so cool is, like, whatever it takes in order for us to be successful. And right. And so, Mika, I'm probably like a lot of other sports chiros that, I mean, we would probably like to be the player. Like, if it was possible to be like on the pitch, being the guy, but I wasn't good enough. So I'm just now finding, like, this is how I can contribute to the success of some athletic pursuit. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, that's absolutely great. Great to hear. I'm not alone in the desire to jump onto the pitch myself. That's great to hear. There are more of us nutbags out there. No, that's great. But it sounds like it's going to be an absolutely cracking lecture you and Jordan are going to be delivering at the symposium. And obviously, those people who are watching, if you already haven't bought your tickets, I have to remind you that the boss told me to do this. But the early bird price is expiring soon, over the next couple of days. So please get your tickets in now if you want to get the reduced price. If, on the other hand, you want to sponsor us a bit more and buy the more expensive ticket, then by all means wait until even the seminar day. That's absolutely fine, up to you. And of course, there are 3 kinds of tickets available. So you can, of course, buy the symposium only, you can buy your head injury module only, or you can buy a combo. So you get all of the amazing content, and it's available for 30 days after the symposium. So you can all watch it at your leisure as well. So it's not something that you have to watch everything live. If you happen to be somewhere where the time zones are a bit, well, preventive for that kind of thing. So far be it from us to keep you up all night. So hence you have the ability to actually tune in later on at your convenience. But yeah, no, that's really cool. I hope everybody will join us. It'll be an amazing symposium. We got lots of fun planned there. And of course, amazing speakers, including Dr. Scott Howitt, who has been giving us a little bit of info about what might be coming up, and also why it's very important. Any parting remarks at this point, Scott? We're running out of time slowly here.
Well, I mean, the thing that comes to mind here is, and you did mention that, again, the expectation is that you do update your education on this head module, concussion module information. We're in a good spot right now to be able to present sort of where we're at today. Later, and it was supposed to be last year, but of course it was a casualty of COVID, like a lot of other things, was moved. But the next consensus statement for concussion will be later this fall. So that'll be in Paris, and that was supposed to be last year, but it's been obviously moved to this year. Generally, sometime February, March, like of the following year, is that when that consensus gets published, and then we sort of distill that and figure out how to update that. So, you know, if you jump on that update now this spring, it'll line up kind of nicely for when we get to that sort of new information that may come out of Paris, or some new information that might be relevant to the material. So.
Absolutely. So this is obviously a field that keeps constantly evolving and constantly changing, and as we figure out more and more stuff. So that's absolutely brilliant to hear. And hence that probably makes sense why the head injury module has to be updated, or what do you call it? Revalidated every 2 years. Yeah. It makes perfect sense to me. Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, hey, thank you, Scott. Thank you for your time. Great to have you on the show, and even more, I look forward to actually seeing you and Jordan live and in the symposium. So it'll be really truly cool. And thank you again for your time, and hope you have a lovely evening there in Canada.
Thank you, Mika. I'll see you as well on and looking forward to your presentation as well. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.